All right, everyone, I think we're going to get started now. Um, my name is Nate Nardi Cyrus. I'm a conservation and land use specialist at the New York State DEC's Hudson River Estuary Program through a partnership with Cornell University. And I'm really excited to welcome you to the second session of our three-part webinar series about headwater streams. This program is offered through a partnership between the Hudson River Estuary Program, Cornell University, and Hudsonia, and we'll be showcasing presentations from the Hudson River Watershed Alliance, Gordon and Svensson LLP, and the town of Poughkeepsie and their consultants. Today, our speakers will be starting the discussion with remote identification of headwater streams using online resources and paper topographic maps. And then we're going to transition to using streams in local planning and incorporating them into that, and give you a glimpse into the world of urban small streams. So really looking forward to the program today. Let's see. Before we get started, let me quickly review a few important webinar details. You should be able to connect to the audio through your computer or phone, and you can find the different options at the bottom of the screen by clicking this ... button here. And if you're having difficulties with audio through your computer, I recommend calling in using this option through your phone system. And if you have any problems, you can follow up in the chat box. Beth Ressler, who just posted the numbers there, she's going to be doing our tech support today, so she should be able to help answer your questions for you. If you're having other difficulties, again, direct all of those questions to the chat box in the bottom right-hand side of the screen. You should use the question and answer function, which is separate from the chat, to submit questions for the presenters. So please try to do that. Also note that your phone lines have been muted, so you don't have to worry about that or your cameras. The webinar is being recorded and we'll notify you when that recording is available. We're going to send a follow-up email after this that'll include that video recording as well as important links that we're going to be discussing today. The end of the webinar, there's going to be a 3-question survey, and we really appreciate if you could give us feedback on our programs through that. And lastly, if you're seeking municipal training credit, you're going to get an automated email from the WebEx service at about 5 o'clock or so, certifying that you've attended the webinar. Okay, for those of you who are new to our series, the Hudson River Estuary Program is a unique program at the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, established to help people enjoy, protect, and revitalize the Hudson River and its valley. So our program works throughout the 10 counties bordering the tidal Hudson, from the New York Harbor to the federal dam in Troy, to achieve many key benefits that include clean water, community resilience to climate change, the vital estuary ecosystem, its fish, wildlife, and habitats, natural scenery of the valley, and opportunities for education, access, recreation, and inspiration on the river. So to learn more about that, I encourage you to read our brand new released action agenda, and that'll give you some more information on our program and the direction that we're going to be taking moving forward. Within the estuary program, our conservation and land use team, which is myself, Laura Heedy, and Ingrid Heckel, work with municipalities and regional conservation partners to incorporate important habitats and natural areas into local land use planning and decision making. And our program website, which I have shown up here, is a clearinghouse for guidance and resources on these topics. And hopefully my colleague Beth will be sharing some of these links. But as I said, we're going to be sending this out via email, so I don't want you to have to worry about that during the webinar. Okay. Last week in our series, we looked at values and threats to headwater streams. So that was really the physical components of the stream itself, the benefits that streams, especially small headwater streams, provide, and then threats to those streams and some potential protections. After today's webinar on mapping and planning, next week we're going to be looking at measures for protection. So I encourage you all to tune in for that, register, and we're going to be looking at protections at the federal, state, and local level, including a case study from the town of Poughkeepsie. So you won't want to miss that. Okay, I'm going to be the first presenter today, and I'm going to give you an overview of some online stream mapping resources. And then from there, Gretchen Stevens from Hudsonia is going to give an introduction to mapping small streams using topographic maps. And we have an exercise for that as well. We're going to end the day with Emily Vale, who's going to be talking about planning for headwater stream protection, and that includes watershed planning and municipal planning. And she's going to talk about a passion of hers, urban streams, and especially those small urban headwater streams that are oftentimes buried underground. Okay, so let me kick this off. Like I said, I'm going to talk about online resources for mapping streams, and this is very helpful for planning boards, zoning boards, any kind of municipal review body that's looking at development proposals. These are some methods that you can use to look at a site and determine if there are likely to be important stream resources there. So let's keep going. I'm going to look at 4 tools primarily: the Hudson Valley Natural Resource Mapper, National Hydrography Dataset, ortho imagery via the State Discover GIS NY website, and the Stream Stats tool. First, I'm going to share something near and dear to our heart here at the Estuary Program. This is the Hudson Valley Natural Resource Mapper, which is an online and interactive mapper that hosts a lot of data specific and unique to our region, but also data that can be found state and nationwide as well. So I encourage you to visit the website for this. We have a lot of training that's specifically targeted to this mapper, but in this case, I just want to showcase some of the data that you can view to help you map small headwater streams and watersheds. So when you first arrive at the mapper, it's pretty easy to to Google search it. So if you Google search Hudson Valley Natural Resource Mapper, it'll take you to a landing page, and then you'll finally end up here after clicking through some disclaimers. The first thing that I recommend doing is to make the screen into full screen mode by clicking this button right here, and that'll expand the screen and allow you to see the application better. All of the data that's available for this mapper is visible on the left-hand side of the screen in these kind of accordion tabs. Once you click on the tab, it'll open it up, and you can see these little check boxes here. You can click stuff on and off, and you should be able to see that on the screen. I will note that some of this data is scale dependent. So if you're way out like we are right now, looking at the entire estuary watershed boundary here, you're not going to be able to see a whole lot. So you really have to zoom into the site level, and you'll see this kind of the text here around the layer will be grayed out if you're not viewing it because you're at the incorrect scale. And this isn't the only layer in this tab. You can easily scroll using this scroll button. Okay. If you're looking for a specific location, you can go to the search tab, which is at the very top, and type in a location. In this case, you can put addresses, but we're going to put Willow, New York in here, which is a small hamlet of the town of Woodstock. So you can see that noted on the red square there. And we'll look at our first available data set. This is the DEC stream classification and trout standard data set. And so what this shows right here is basically the regulatory authority of the New York State DEC's protections of water regulations. So you'll notice that there's 2 different colors here. One is a known trout stream, one is other stream. The reason why we draw that distinction is primarily for non-regulatory reasons. Trout are often indicators of high quality stream habitat. They require this kind of cool, well oxygenated waters, clean waters, and so there can kind of be a proxy for water quality there. But if you click on individual segments of these streams, like you can see we did up here, it'll tell you the classification of that stream. So a class CT would indicate that it's a class C stream with a trout standard, which means that it is in fact regulated by the DEC. And if this is unfamiliar to you, I strongly recommend that you tune in for our next week's webinar, which is going to be looking at statewide protections, which this is a part of. But so you can see these are all divided into little segments here. This only covers this small bit of the stream. If you click the area just immediately upstream of it, you'll notice that that's actually classified as class B, which has even more stringent requirements to meet those permit obligations. So as a point to that, the way that the regulations are written, any stream that's mapped above this, so it's pretty likely that there's continued stream length that's above this section. This mapping is pretty low accuracy overall, but any perennial stream that flows into this segment is regulated at the, regulated according to the segment just downstream of it. So any perennial stream going in here would also be a Class B with a trout standard. If it is an intermittent stream that flows into that, that's automatically regulated as a Class D stream, which affords no protections at this time. Another data layer that we have here is the stream condition index. This provides slightly more information, at least more on stream length. It was created using the National Hydrography data set, which I'll go into a little later, or an earlier version of that. And it modeled the quality of water in these streams using basic kind of land cover data sources. So none of these were field verified. It really is just a kind of a best guess as far as what the water quality is based on what the surrounding landscape looks like. So you can get an idea of what maybe your highest quality streams are in your municipality or watershed. So if you click on this stream segment, you'll see again that there's quite a lot of information provided. And so you can get an idea of, why this length was rated the way it was based on, all of these factors that went into the model. Two layers that we have here. The first is the riparian buffers area. If any of you attended last week's talk, Beth Ressler talked extensively about riparian buffers and the value that they have to streams. This is a variable width buffer that was generated through modeling done by the New York Natural Heritage Program. And you can see here, this is modeled on the 50-year flood event. You may be familiar with FEMA flooding, flood mapping, which is for the 100 and 500-year storms, respectively. So this is for a much smaller storm, and it also has adjacent wetlands. So it gives you an idea of kind of the most important area for the streams, and you can see that right on the Hudson Valley Natural Resource Mapper. If you click within the watershed, you actually get some watershed specific information that shows up in this little tab here. In this case, the Beaver Kill Esopus Creek, which you can kind of see the boundary on these sides of the screen here, has an impervious area of 0.31% and a percent forest cover of 80. So this is a very forested watershed, and so you would assume based on these metrics that the streams in this area are pretty high quality overall. And that's borne out by looking at the stream condition index, which seems to indicate that these streams are of very high quality. Also note that you can actually look at aerial images using this tool. So if you go to the right-hand side of the screen, you can see this base map and you can change that out. So in this case, we're looking at kind of a blank base map to start. We click on New York State aerial, and that'll give us much more detail. This is color leaf off. This was an aerial image taken in springtime, so you can see, the deciduous trees have no leaves. You can see down to the ground. You can see the conifers versus the deciduous forests, but you can also really start to see the small streams on the landscape. So I invite you to try to look at this and pick out some small streams that aren't mapped. We have the mapped streams here from the stream condition index, this large area. You can see how inaccurate they are at this scale. But you might notice this set of streams as well. That would be considered a headwater stream that's unmapped. And then in that right-hand corner there, you can see the stream here. So you can use this data to identify streams just by aerial interpretation. What about this? We have this other stream segment here. You can see that it continues up in this direction, and you may be able to pick out a smaller little tributary that comes up through these ponds here. Okay, moving on to the National Hydrography Database. I already kind of brought this up once, but there's a number of sub data sets in this. There's the high resolution, so 1 to 24,000 scale or better. And this was developed by New York State DEC based on USGS topo quads. And DEC is constantly working to better align the stream segments with ortho imagery. You could see how off they were in the image that we saw. They're using aerial imagery to correct that. And so this is available for most of the state, so you should be able to get pretty easy access to that. Some places have even higher resolution. This is 1 to 8,000 or better, and that's available in the New York City watershed. So the New York City Department of Environmental Protection created this data set based on 1 meter elevation, and that's also available for Ulster County at large if you're lucky enough to be in that county. This is best viewed through online through the national map because that's going to be more regularly updated, and there's constantly being updates to this data set. And they have a way that you can indicate whether a stream is perennial versus intermittent. They try to differentiate, but often that's wrong. A lot of this work is done remotely and not field verified, and so I wouldn't tend to trust that. You're really going to have to rely on a site visit for confirming all of these resources. All right, so you can see right here, this is that area of Willow we were looking at, and you can just see how many more streams this high resolution data is picking up and how much would be lost if you're doing a review and you're just relying on this versus what was available through the enhanced NHD here as a comparison. You're going to be viewing this through the national map. This is, again, the best viewer to be able to see this data. And if you click the search box here, you can type in Willow, New York. That's how we've been getting here. And it gives you a little point there to orient yourself. You can have a much wider base map gallery, including a pretty neat USGS topo map where they actually stitched them all together. These are independent quadrangles that were originally developed, and this is kind of a continuous surface of really good quality topo maps. And Gretchen's going to be talking more about how to map small streams using this using topo maps, and so I invite you to, if you have a lower resolution NHD data, you could do your own mapping and kind of fill out the picture there at potential small streams that might have been missed. Okay, so you can go into this little layer button here if you want to get to the National Hydrography data set, because there's quite a few information sources in the national map. And you click there, and you're going to get kind of this busy set of data. It looks kind of complicated. It does have things like flow direction, which might be interesting to you. But there's certain data points that you can kind of weed this out from. Before I get to that, if you click on this button here, that'll turn it into a legend. So you can kind of better understand what all of these symbols mean if you do want to have a more complicated map. But like I said, if you want to just look at what the pertinent information is, you really want to focus in on this flow line large scale. That's going to be the product that at its most simplest. There's a lot of other neat features in this mapper. Here we have the draw function. So again, if you wanted to have those topo maps on in the background, you can draw your own additional potential streams and print this out ultimately, and that can be really great for bringing to a planning board meeting or anything that's reviewing development on a site. Really cool, you can actually upload your own GIS data. So if you are a GIS user, you can upload a file of your own stream mapping and compare that against what NHD has. So we happen to have a really great file. This is a mapping project that was done by Hudsonia. My colleague Ingrid Heckel actually did a lot of work for this. Where in 2011, there was extensive field work and remote sensing and looking at aerial and topo maps across the entire municipality, and they developed this really high resolution, local scale mapping. And I already said we had that 1 to 8,000 level mapping. Let me just toggle between these two screens. You can see that's that original map, and this is how many more small headwater streams were identified from this kind of intensive mapping process. So there's a lot that we don't see on the landscape. So there's a lot of opportunity to go find this stuff on your own, even if you don't have these products available to you. If you do happen to have high resolution data, this is the markup app where you can suggest changes to NHD. So if you happen to have data at a higher resolution, or you maybe contracted it with a consultant, you can actually upload these and get that put on the national map. And I really suggest doing this because, if they do accept that as reliable and post it to the map, you could be helping a lot of other organizations in their conservation efforts throughout your municipality or service area in the case of a land trust. Okay, moving on. This is Discover GIS Data NY, which is the New York State site for accessing orthoimagery. There are images since 1994, and depending on where you are in the state, different images happen at different times, and that automatically shows what images are available based on the extent of your map. So in 1994 and 2001, imagery is available in color infrared, and that's I'll show you an example of that in just a second. But it's a way of taking pictures where you're able to capture different wavelengths, and ultimately you can get higher contrast images so that you can really see small streams and wetlands. They really pop out because they show up as black against a largely kind of red and blue scale map. And you'll notice that vegetation is pink and red in these maps, and that's by design. It's really a reflection of photosynthesizing that's happening at that time of year. There are limitations. As I said, you can really see those evergreen and conifer canopy areas, and that could obscure some small streams, so that'll be difficult to map using that. And then if you're in very steep topography, the shadows from trees and the land itself can often make it difficult to pick out the black of the small streams. So here we are at the platform, Discover GIS Data NY. You can go to this tool symbol up in the right-hand corner of your screen, and you can search a location here. We could have searched Willow, but we decided to switch it up, and we searched Sickler Road in Woodstock, which is in Willow. And here are the images that are available for this section of road. Like I said, that'll change based on where you are. So I'm going to run through those images so you can get an idea of how this could be useful for picking out small streams. This is what I was talking about, where you can see the red from the color infrared here. The very dark red is conifer forests. Note that the deciduous forest is this like deep blue color, so that allows you to quickly and easily pick out areas of deciduous versus coniferous land cover. You'll also see that there's these areas that show up in red. Those are generally agricultural fields or lawns. They're photosynthesizing because this is taken in early spring, and the areas of darker color are generally, more natural meadow type areas. And there's a whole nuance to detecting things, but I'll draw your attention to the streams. This is pretty obviously a stream, a somewhat larger stream here, but it's that black color that really shows up well. This is an image from 2001. It's a slightly more accurate at a 1 foot scale. Now we're moving into natural color from 2013, and it's, you can see how the contrast isn't as great as it is for the color infrared. So I do encourage you to kind of flip back and forth between all of these because some things are going to show up better than others. And this is the latest for this site, 2016, and it almost looks darker. It's a higher resolution, but it's almost more difficult to pick out those small streams from this extent. So can you find the small streams here? I'll let you take a look at this really quick and see if your eye is drawn to them. All right, hopefully you saw this one and this one, and there may be some adjacent to the second one here. It's hard to tell, but at the very least, these two show up pretty well. And for both the Discover GIS Data NY mapper and the Hudson Valley Natural Resource Mapper, we both have tax parcel data that's available and streaming. So this should make it pretty easy to identify a parcel that you're looking at and orient yourself to the map to see where that stream is. Okay, the final tool I'm going to be discussing is stream stats, and that should allow you to delineate drainage areas and watersheds, which I'll show you an example of, but it also does a lot more. If you're kind of tech savvy and want to get into it, there's flow estimates that it provides, flow lines, which can suggest the location of small streams. This is data that's based on digital elevation models. So it's kind of predicting where streams would be based on the topography. So that could be a good starting point if you're looking at that scale as well. So this is the stream stats map. Again, this is hosted by USGS, and you can type in your location, Willow, and it'll take you right to this spot where we've been going. So you can select a state as the study area, click there, and then you delineate a site after you click on a part of the map. So in this case, we're going to look to delineate the watershed that feeds this point. So you see this small stream here. Everything that drains into this stream that flows to that point is going to be mapped. And so we have to wait. Sometimes you have to wait quite a bit, so don't be concerned about that. And then you'll get these really awesome maps. This is a very strange looking watershed to me, but there's no other mapping available at this scale for watersheds. And a great application of this, I was on my municipal conservation advisory council, and we're doing an NRI, or natural resources inventory update. And we have some surface water reservoirs that are pretty small. And so I was able to use this to actually map pretty easily the watershed of our reservoirs, or the multiple watersheds of our reservoirs. So that could be used in planning to make sure that land use within those areas is noted and is compatible with that use. And how I did that was that you're actually allowed to take this image and easily export it as a shapefile for GIS users. So it makes it really easy. Or you could just have it in a map like this right here. So that can be effective as well, depending on what you're doing. Okay, that's pretty much all I had. I'm not going to go into this because we're going to hear a lot more about urban streams, but tracking down buried streams can be a lot more difficult, as Emily can attest to. Often you'll see they'll be at the surface in some points, and then they'll be buried for a while. And so the stream stats tool can be useful in that way because it's using the elevation to predict where streams are. So it could give you an idea of where a buried stream might be. There's also a lot of other resources that are here that you could do some research and try to find where those are, but it's a little bit more time intensive. We don't have a great buried streams mapper quite yet. Okay, well, that's all I had. I'm happy to take some questions if Beth is willing to queue those up for me. Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. And I just want to let everybody know I put links to each one of the mappers that Nate talked about in the chat. Okay, so there's a couple questions, Nate. The first one is, can you download data or stream profiles for select areas as shapefiles to import as layers into your own GIS projects from this tool? And I believe that came in when you were talking about the national map, but maybe you could address all the mappers or all the mappers you know about for that.
Sure. Yeah, let me hit that on a mapper by mapper scale. So as far as the Hudson Valley Natural Resource Mapper, you'll notice that next to each kind of clickable area, there's an info button. It's just an eye with a box around it. And you can click on that, and that'll bring you to the link where you can download that information. You can't upload anything to that map, but you can certainly be directed to the areas where you can download that information. In the national map, the NHD data is available for download, and you can go to the website there to figure out how to do that. It's a little bit of a process, but it'll give you kind of that full set of data that you're able to see. It's my understanding that you can't upload data to the national map, at least for your own purposes, but you can, again, use that app that I showed to submit your data, and they can review it and decide whether or not they'll amend it to the National Hydrography data set. The final mapper, now I'm blanking on it, the stream stats mapper, you can actually bring data into that. So that's, or maybe I'm confusing things now. You can't bring it into the stream stats. You can export the stream stats data, and you can bring the data into the national mapper. I got confused. Sorry, I'm trying to think of this on the fly.
Yeah, I think that's
yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Great.
So hopefully I hit all the points there.
I think so. Thank you. It's a lot to remember. Okay, we have one more question, and it says, will the NHD be made available in Dutchess County at some point in the future?
Yeah, and so I'm assuming you're referring to that 8,000, 1 to 8,000 scale high resolution mapping. That would have to be done through partnership with another organization, probably. I'm not aware of any state level plans to do high resolution stream mapping in that county. In Ulster County, that was only able to be achieved because the New York City Department of Environmental Protection wanted to fund it for protection efforts in the watershed to protect New York City water supply. So that's the reason why that data is available there. So if there is a partner in Dutchess County or the region that is interested in that and could fund something like that, it does require additional funding to get that done.
That's all the questions we have right now.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing right now. And I'm going to pass it on to Gretchen Stevens. So I'll let Gretchen, do you want to get your PowerPoint set up? Oh, I'm sorry. That's my fault. I have to let me pass the ball to you. Okay, you should be able to do that now, Gretchen. And while Gretchen is queuing that up, I just want to introduce her. Gretchen is the Director of Biodiversity Resources at Hudsonia, a nonprofit environmental research education institute based in Dutchess County. She has over 35 years of experience as a field biologist and has been a longtime partner in delivering environmental education programming with the estuary program to local land use decision makers throughout the valley. So with that, I'll let you take it away, Gretchen.
Yes. Hello, everyone. This is a more hands-on segment of this webinar. We're going to be demonstrating how to find many of the unmapped headwater streams using topographic maps and give you a chance to practice these techniques. Just a reminder, which was illustrated very well in one of Nate's slides, that a great many of the headwater streams are not mapped at all on any of the publicly available maps. There's a lot that you can do yourself to find those from topographic maps and certainly, of course, from visiting a site yourself. Many of you, I'm sure, let's see, Nate, my thing is not advancing. What do we do about that?
Seems like the same. Can you click on the screen and then try advancing?
Okay, good. That works. Many of you, I'm sure, are accustomed to using topographic maps of one kind or another for hiking and orienteering, and maybe for other purposes. And you may also be accustomed to seeing elevation contour lines on site plans and subdivision plats and other drawings depicting the sites of proposed land development projects or, say, lands for public recreational uses. This session is especially to show you how to use topographic maps to find all the streams that do not show up on publicly available maps and, though ecologically important, are often overlooked in project planning and environmental reviews. Because the contour lines indicate many aspects of the terrain, places that are higher and lower in the landscape, aspect, steep slopes, gentle slopes, flat areas, benches, swales, and basins, you can use the contours to predict where water is likely to collect and flow, even where ponds, wetlands, and streams have not been explicitly mapped. Each contour line connects points of equal elevation in the landscape, and neighboring contour lines are spaced at a standard elevational distance on each map. On a site plan like this one, the contour interval is often 2 feet. On a USGS topographic map in the 7.5-minute series, the contour interval will be 10 feet or 3 meters in much of the landscape, but 20 feet or 6 meters on quadrangles where there's lots of steep terrain. Typically, a few of the contour lines are labeled with the actual elevation above sea level. This line, for example, circled in blue, is at 960 feet above sea level, and this one near it is at 950 feet. Thus, if you're moving from west to east, from left to right between those lines, you'd be moving downhill and you'd be moving down 10 feet in elevation. Remembering that each contour line indicates points of equal elevation, on this site map, if you're walking on a path along this contour line, which I'm outlining in red, you'd be at a constant elevation of 960 feet above sea level. This map has 2-foot contour intervals, so if you turn right and walk down to the neighboring contour line and follow it south, you'd then be walking at a constant elevation of 958 feet, 2 feet below the first line. On all maps with elevation contour lines, steeper slopes are indicated where the contour lines are closer together, and gentler slopes or flat areas are indicated where the contours are farther apart. So here in the upper right is an area of steep slopes that I've circled in orange, and here's another area in the lower right. And over here on the left is an area of gentler slopes, where the contour lines are far apart, where I've circled in green. And here's another area of gentler slopes. This is an aerial view of a fairly dramatic forested landscape. There's a road running north to south, top to bottom, through the center of this image, with a few fields near the road, and the road appears to be flanked by hills that rise steeply on each side. In some places, just by the shadows, you can detect where there are steep slopes, swales, and ravines. Here's a USGS topographic map, a segment of the same area. In this close-up of the topographic map, several streams are mapped with blue lines. Notice the shape of the contour lines in the vicinities of those streams. The streams all occur in places where are these series of V-shaped contours with the V's pointing upslope. That is the basic signature of a stream on a topographic map. Here the streams are mapped, but on other map segments, that same configuration of contour lines can lead you to streams that have not been mapped. Here's an example of a different USGS topographic map section. To find unmapped streams on this map, first you'll want to figure out which areas are higher and which areas are lower on the map. We can see from a couple of labeled elevations that the land is high in the northwest quadrant at 550 feet and higher, and lower to the south and southeast. There's a contour labeled 400 feet. Finding those few labeled contour lines is often the quickest way to tell what is high and what is low on your map. In the southern part of this map, there is one mapped stream shown as a blue line on the lower part of this hillside. But from the contour lines elsewhere on this map, I'll guess that there are several unmapped streams in this map segment. Starting at the northeast corner, at the upper right, I predict a stream right here. I'm drawing it in green up in the northeast corner. And another one right here. You see that I'm drawing the stream through this series of V-shaped contour lines. And another stream here, running into this depression at the bottom, which is probably an unmapped pond. I'm going to color it in there. At the southern stream that was already mapped in blue, see that the V-shaped contour lines continue farther up the hill. So I'm guessing that the stream actually starts way up here. You see that way up there, and then joins the mapped part of the stream. And here's another topographic map section for you to practice on. This is one of the maps that we sent you, that Nate sent you by email earlier today. So I hope you have a printout of this in front of you. We'd like you to find and draw all the unmapped streams that you can see on this map. First, you'd want to figure out which places are high and which are low in different parts of the map. There are a few labeled contour lines that will give you some clues. Also, remember that the land rises on either side of the mapped streams or their floodplains. Then look for the V-shaped contour lines with the V's pointing uphill. There are other places where V's point downhill. Those are not streams. Here I've exaggerated the streams that are already mapped. They show up as thinner blue lines on the map printouts that you have. Here are a few examples of stream delineations to get you started. Here in the center left, one stream emerges from this little flat area and runs down this fairly steep hillside to join the map stream across the road at the bottom. It looks like another stream runs northeastward from that same flat area and runs down to feed a small pond, which is then drained by the mapped stream shown in blue. Over here on the west side is another stream and another one nearby. And here's one up in the northeast. We'd like you to continue to find and draw all the other unmapped streams on this map section. I found at least 19 unmapped stream segments. There may be more. When you're doing this, make sure that you're drawing streams only where the series of V-shaped contour lines point uphill. I just want to caution you, though, about that. There are other places where there are V-shaped contour lines that point downhill. For example, right here in the center left, I'm drawing in yellow a line up through some of those V-shaped lines that are pointing downhill. That is not a stream. That's more like a promontory. And over here in the lower right is another situation where those V-shaped or U-shaped contour lines are all in a series, but there they are pointing downhill and not uphill. That is not a stream. So be cautious about that. So take a few minutes and look at this stream, draw everything that you can that you believe is or may be an unmapped stream. And in a couple minutes, we'll get back together and see what we've found. Okay, so let's get back together. And I'm going to show you, whoops. Here are shown in red are all the stream segments that I found on this map. You may have found some more. Um, and if you did, we can talk about them in the Q&A section later on. But just take a minute to compare this map with the one that you were drawing. Okay, so I'm gonna move on. This is another a topographic map. This is of the Millbrook Preserve, a part of it in the town of New Paltz. We'd like you to find all the unmapped streams on this map. This is another of the maps that we sent by email, so we hope you all have a printout of this in front of you. The streams shown in blue are from the National Hydrography Dataset of the U.S. Geological Survey and are drawn fairly coarsely, so they don't track the contour lines closely. You should ignore that imprecision and draw your own additional streams as precisely as you can according to the contour lines that you see here. You'll notice that there are no labels indicating the elevation above sea level on any of the contour lines. So how else would you figure out which area are higher and which areas are lower? You need to know that in order to predict which areas are likely to collect and carry water, and to identify unmapped streams where the V-shaped contour lines point uphill, not downhill. Streams are in places that collect water from the surrounding landscape, so are always at lower elevations than the land that is immediately adjacent to the stream or its floodplain. Of course, streams can occur at high elevations and on high, steep hillsides, but always the land immediately flanking the stream will be at a higher elevation than the stream itself at that location. So in this map, much of the mapped stream lengths run through these broad, flat areas that appear to be the floodplains of those mapped streams. I say that because the contour lines are widely spaced, indicating flat or gently sloped terrain. And when you see this along a stream, it's typically a current or former floodplain. Then you can be sure that the land rises instead of dropping on either side of those floodplains. That's all you really need to know to understand the highs and lows for this exercise. I'm going to put a few more high and low labels up there, and I'll leave this image on the screen. But we'd like you to take a few minutes to find all the unmapped streams here. Then we'll get back together and you can compare your findings to mine. So I'm just going to leave you for a minute or so and see what you can find. Okay, so let's get back together. I want to show you the ones that I came up with. Get to the next slide. All of these, the ones shown in red, are the streams that I found on this segment. There are a number of other places where you'll find V-shaped contours in a series, but in most of those cases, they are pointing downhill and not uphill, so they're not mapped as potential streams. So I'll just give you a little time to compare this with your own map. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them now. And then I want to say a few things about field visits to verify your stream predictions.
All right, Gretchen, we don't have anything in the chat or the Q&A. So
Okay.
give it a minute or so, and then we can move on to your next part of the talk.
Okay.
Maybe 30 seconds.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think if you do have any questions for Gretchen that come up, I encourage you to save those, and you can ask again after she finishes this next part of the presentation.
Okay, so let's see. Let's make sure this advances. For any of you who conduct environmental reviews of land development projects at the municipal or state level, or if you're in any other position of planning for development or management of a land area, we strongly encourage you to visit every site. A site visit can open your eyes to important features that are not evident on maps alone and are not necessarily conveyed to you by a landowner or a developer. The purposes of field visits are several. Certainly to identify important natural features that can't be detected remotely. Also to assess the character and quality of streams and other habitats. To assess the jurisdictional status of features such as streams and wetlands. That is, do they qualify for local, state, or federal protection? And to assess the potential impacts from proposed land uses. Those impacts are often much easier to visualize in the field than on a map back at the town hall or in your office. Before a field visit for such purposes, you should prepare by first analyzing topographic maps and aerial photos to identify potential unmapped streams or other features such as wetlands or steep slopes or large forests or other natural features that might be of interest or concern to you. You should acquaint yourself with local regulations that might be relevant to the site. If there's a stream protection ordinance, for example, what are the minimum criteria for jurisdiction? What are the setback requirements? What are the use limitations? Figure out what questions need to be answered in the field, and then plan your field itinerary so that you can efficiently get around to all the important places to answer those questions. This is especially important for large sites where you know you'll be unable to see everything. Bring site plans, other site maps, topographic maps, and other relevant documents that might provide useful information while you're looking at the site. A camera is always handy in case you need to illustrate some significant features for your colleagues. When you're on the site, have the landowner or applicant or their representative show you the locations and limits of proposed developed features. This is much better than trying to figure those things out for yourself, and also have them explain proposed mitigation for adverse impacts if needed. Be sure to see the whole site, not just the development footprint. If it's a 5-acre site and the proposed development is only on 2 acres, then look at the rest of the site too, because there may be features such as streams that are outside of the development footprint or on a neighboring property that would be affected. And because plans might change and the development footprint might shift to other areas before the project plan is final. You want to have all the relevant information right up front. Be sure to see all the places of interest and potential concern, not just the places that the applicant wants to show you. And don't take too narrow a view. If you're concerned about streams, for example, look closely at how the upland areas are supporting the streams and consider how the proposed land uses might alter that relationship. Take photos to document features of special interest and take notes that will help you describe your observations to your colleagues later on. We are sending you a link to a virtual field visit to the Millbrook Preserve in New Paltz, the place where you were just looking for unmapped streams. It takes you around to several small streams and shows you what they look like, discusses their physical attributes and ecology, and their connections to the surrounding landscape. So that's all that I needed to say right now, and I'll pass this back to Nate, and next we'll hear from Emily Vale, who'll be talking about urban streams and watershed planning.
Great. Thank you, Gretchen, so much. That was terrific. Seemed like that helped out a lot of folks. I want everyone to know that I did post a virtual field trip in the chat box, but I'll be sharing it again in our follow-up email. And again, continue to post questions in the Q&A, and we should have time at the end. So if you remember any questions that you want to ask Gretchen or just a larger conversation, throw that in the Q&A now, and we can address that later. Okay, so let me just get Emily all squared away. Okay. All right, Emily, you've been granted privileges.
Great.
Well,
Thank you so much, Nate.
while Emily is setting up her presentation, I want to introduce her. She's been the executive director of the Hudson River Watershed Alliance since 2019. She served for 8 years as the Watershed Outreach Specialist for the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's Hudson River Estuary Program in collaboration with the New York State Water Resources Institute at Cornell University. And her work has supported community-based watershed groups, municipalities, and other partners throughout the region to improve water quality in the Hudson Valley. Her research has focused on green infrastructure, urban streams, and intersections of art and community engagement. And for a little extra, she has a BA in Environmental Studies from Vassar College and an MS in Natural Resources from Cornell University. So thank you so much. We're very lucky to have Emily with us today. Take it away.
Great. Thanks so much, Nate. And thanks to Nate and Gretchen for teeing up this conversation. It's really great to be a part of this, this series. And thanks to you all for joining in on this important topic. So I'm going to be talking today about small urban streams. So those headwater streams that are in our more densely developed cities, villages, urban centers, along with watershed planning. So I'll talk about where these small urban streams are and how they transition to being thought of as more of a natural resource into infrastructure, some of the challenges and opportunities associated with that. I will talk a little bit about City of Kingston and the Tannery Brook case study, which, as Nate mentioned, is very near and dear to my heart. I'll give an overview of watershed planning and other conservation plans that can be used to incorporate maps of small streams and talk a little bit about what's next, some future opportunities. So let's start with small urban streams. Where are all these small urban streams? You know, when we look across the landscape and we look at the types of mappers that Nate showed, we see lots of blue lines throughout our rural areas, and then suddenly they stop in our cities. And of course, small streams used to be just as common in urban areas. There was a study that came out of Baltimore that found that 73% of headwater streams that were in the city of Baltimore have been buried. And you can see this map in the city of Baltimore, all of those streams are buried. And then when you get further afield, all of a sudden these streams show up. And these are, you know, in large part, small headwater streams that used to be in cities. So where did they go? Many small streams were buried as part of a storm sewer or a combined sewer system. So they actually were incorporated into municipal infrastructure. In some cases to help convey waste. For example, the Beaver Creek in Albany, this small stream that you can still see evidence of in this ravine, it used to be a flowing stream, and of course now is a part of a big combined sewer overflow restoration project. Small streams were also incorporated into storm sewers or just buried. They still show up through infiltration. So in some cases, even when they weren't designed to be conveying waste or stormwater, those areas that are low-lying, that are collecting runoff, may still infiltrate into pipes. So in large part, our streams and cities are considered infrastructure. They may physically be in the storm sewer or the sanitary sewer, or they may be channelized or buried. So it's a much more infrastructure kind of relationship with water in cities. When we bury streams or channelize streams, it results in a decreased connection with the soil, the riparian area, and the floodplain. And last week's session talked about the importance of this connection with soil, the connection with the riparian area and floodplain, to have alterations of nutrients, to break down certain pollutants, to make sure there's a place for floodwaters to go. And so when we channelize and bury urban streams, we end up having water quality and quantity issues. We also have an increased connection with impervious surfaces and urban runoff. So we have our roads, parking lots, rooftops connected to these small streams that have very confined channels, like you can see here in Kingston with the building right here next to the Tannery Brook. And small streams can still cause big problems. So again, we'll be talking more about the Tannery Brook in a couple of minutes, but these are a couple of photos. This is where the Tannery Brook crosses under Washington Avenue in the city of Kingston, which was the site of a massive sinkhole that caused millions of dollars in damage and repairs to the city, disrupting a very important roadway. And then more recently, this is an example of some localized flooding, again, in a neighborhood that's impacted by the Tannery Brook. And this is not a mapped floodplain. This is not a stream that shows up on many maps because it is so small. And yet you can see the devastation that the people in this neighborhood had to deal with in a heavy rainstorm, but not even a hurricane or a named storm or anything like that. So even though we have small streams, they can still cause very big problems. So it's important to map them, know where they are, and be thinking about opportunities to improve these scenarios. So daylighting is one option to restore buried streams. Daylighting is a process that restores the stream channel and allows that water to come to the surface and see the light of day. And many folks are familiar with the Sawmill River stream daylighting in Yonkers. This was a major project at the mouth of the Sawmill River, not a small stream, big project, but also really huge impact, bringing that stream and creating a park around it in Yonkers. But there are also examples of very small headwater streams that have been buried and then daylighted or daylit as a restoration opportunity. So this photo shows one of those in the village of New Paltz. This is a section of a stream that was buried in the Peace Park. And what the village of New Paltz found was that it was actually cheaper to do a stream daylighting restoration project than to repair the sewer infrastructure. So this stream was causing damage to their storm sewers, and it was more expensive to do a project underneath the sidewalk, alongside the road, in the right of way, than to bring that stream in where it used to actually be in through the Peace Park and have the stream be an amenity to that park, along with obviously the water quality and quantity improvements. Another example is in the village of Ravenna in Albany County. The village has received several New York State grants to turn an unused municipal parking lot into a park, add green infrastructure and bioretention, and also to daylight a tributary of the Hanacroy Creek. So you can see here, there's this tributary right before it enters the parking lot. And then once it crosses the parking lot, it's actually underneath this storm sewer. It goes under this guardrail. You can sort of see this next manhole cover, and this is an area that's very prone to flooding. This building has been flooded many times. So by, again, bringing the stream up, doing this daylighting project, there's clear flooding, water quality, habitat benefits, and so on. So if you can do a stream daylighting project like Yonkers and the Sawmill River, that's fantastic. But this is just to say that even our small urban streams can be restored in ways that are fundable through grant programs, that are manageable and actually may be more cost effective than some of the more traditional hard infrastructure approaches. So urban small streams come with water quality, quantity, and infrastructure challenges, and you may be very limited in the kinds of stream channel improvements that you can make. So if you have areas that are prone to flooding, it would be great if you have an opportunity like the municipal parking lot in Ravenna or the Peace Park in New Paltz to have some place for those floodwaters to go. But in many of our urban areas, our cities and villages, you have development right along the urban stream, you have it crossing private property, and you may be very limited in the space constraints of what you can do. And so then we have to look up into the watershed, into the sewer shed, to think about opportunities for green infrastructure and other types of restoration projects to filter and infiltrate runoff before it reaches the stream. So we can think about many of the functions that Beth talked about last week in her riparian areas talk, and think about how those might translate perhaps not directly alongside the stream, but there's ways to replicate those benefits throughout the watershed, or if it's part of a storm sewer, thinking about that sewer shed, those impervious surface connections. So some examples of green infrastructure for stormwater management include rain gardens, bioswales, pervious pavement. These are practices that allow the rain to hit the paved surface and enter into a greener practice, often using plants and vegetation to infiltrate that runoff right into the ground. This is an example of a municipal parking lot in Kingston that has extensive green infrastructure throughout to really help reduce the impact on small streams like the Tannery Brook. Other opportunities include street trees, open space like parks, even yards. All of these can help improve urban streams, and thinking about the timing and the intensity with which the water will hit that urban stream. So I have a real passion for urban streams and tracking them down, and Nate already gave you sort of an overview of how to think about this. I did a lot of work on my Tannery Brook project, which I'll talk about in one moment, but how do you find these buried streams once they are not at the surface and they're hidden? I have found that the Library of Congress is an excellent resource. You can find lots of municipal maps, particularly from the late 1800s. There are lots of land use maps that are really useful, that are very accessible through the Library of Congress. Looking through your local archives, local libraries, municipal archives, historical societies. And it's also really important to check in with your engineering and public works departments at your municipality. What I found in Kingston is that the engineering department had extensive archives that showed exactly when and where sewers came in and streams were channelized, and it was really a fantastic resource. And same with public works department. They know the areas that that are prone to localized flooding. They are able to document and know some of these problem areas that may or may not be on the radar of people outside a very specific neighborhood. So again, thinking about how these urban streams have transitioned from being thought of as more of a natural resource to more of an engineering problem, it's really important for those of us who are interested in conservation and watersheds and natural resources to be in conversation with the people who know and manage the infrastructure. So those conversations and those linkages are really important. Nate also mentioned stream stats, and I have found that stream stats is an excellent tool to predict where you might expect a stream to be or have been. Again, because it's based on topography and it uses those models, even if those streams are no longer at the surface, there's still actually it leaves a trace, right? It leaves the small channel, the indentation, and so the stream stats models are actually really effective at picking those up and predicting places where small streams might be buried. One thing that I want to add too is that we found during Hurricane Ida that many places were flooded where we did not see water at the surface. We did not see streams on the surface. And so that really brought home the significance of knowing where streams have been and where they have been buried, and knowing where people might actually be at risk where they don't realize it because they're not in mapped floodplain areas. So I think this is really significant for water quality, but also public health and safety as well. So I've talked a little bit about the Tannery Brook. This is a very small stream in Kingston. It's a first order stream. And this stream, although it has been really important for the city of Kingston over its long history, in more recent times has been channelized, buried, rerouted. It's got a very complex hydrology. And the Tannery Brook has also caused major infrastructure damage in Kingston, like the sinkhole on Washington Avenue and flooding in certain neighborhoods. So in 2018, I did a project called Tracing Tannery Brook. If you're interested in seeing some of that work, you can go on my website. And I poured through old maps. I documented where the stream was, looking at its shape over time, how residents in the city of Kingston used the stream, starting from the 1600s and on. The earliest map that I found of the stream actually was 1683. And I also created a couple of different public engagement, arts-based opportunities for people to talk about their relationship with the stream and explore that. So this photo is from the O Positive Festival in 2018. It's an arts, music, and wellness festival. And this parking lot has the Tannery Brook buried under it. You can see this storm drain. That's the stream, and you could look in there and see the water running. And we asked people who came what belongs in a healthy stream. And so they traced the stream channel, but they also drew people and plants and fish and animals and all kinds of other things that they know belong in a healthy stream. I also, as part of this project, had a gallery exhibit where I showed replicas, copies of many of the historic maps that I had found with interpretive text, primary source documents, photos before and after, and so on. And we had so many people come out and find their houses on these historic maps. And it really helped folks understand what conditions used to be like, what they might be like going forward, and thinking about what some of these restoration opportunities might really be. This is a map of the city of Kingston as part of the open space plan. This was adopted in 2019 with 10 different top priority goals. And I want to zoom in on this section in particular, not only because it includes the Tannery Brook and the Main Street Brook, its main tributary, but also because we were really excited to see that one of the top goals of the open space plan was to have 2,500 linear feet of stream corridor restored, thinking about renaturalizing the ecosystem where feasible, helping to manage stormwater flow, and improving water quality and aesthetics. So this is really exciting to see this small stream mapped, prioritized for restoration, and thinking both about the stream channel and the watershed as opportunities to improve these features. So how did this happen? This was a long time coming. So In 2009 and 2014, City of Kingston worked with Hudsonia to document significant habitats within the city boundaries. And this was really the first time in the more modern era that we saw really great maps of the Tannery Brook and the Main Street Brook that were clearly documented by people who had walked the streams and really understood where they were. These maps were brought into the Hudson River Estuary Program's Habitat Summary in 2014 for the City of Kingston. In 2015, the City of Kingston did a tidal Rondout Creek Watershed Management Plan. And even though the Tannery Brook flows into the Esopus Creek, it actually is diverted into the 12th and the Rondout. And the tidal Rondout Creek described this and also some opportunities for restoration. So always helpful to document this complex hydrology in addition to the mapping. In 2018, City of Kingston created a natural resource inventory, which also described this complex hydrology, these interconnections, and the Tannery Brook, Main Street Brook, and 12th. My project, both the gallery exhibit and the O Positive interactive event, those both took place in 2018, and I was able to bring some of that public enthusiasm to the open space planning process in 2019. So having these events with the Tannery Brook really brought it to the surface of our conversations as a municipality. The interactive exhibit in particular, we really thought of that as a cultural daylighting. So you can do a physical daylighting and actually do stream restoration and heavy engineering work. But in this case, by telling the story, by sharing these maps, by helping people connect with the stream, we really thought of it as more of a cultural daylighting. And that showed up really strong in the open space plan. People in Kingston are talking about these issues, they're noticing flooding, they're making some of these connections, and they're getting involved. In 2020, the open space plan was adopted into Kingston's comprehensive plan, and even more recently in 2021, the Main Street Brook, which is the main tributary to the Tannery Brook here, they join underground here before they go into the Esopus Creek. So the Main Street Brook will be getting a flood study that includes hydrologic and hydraulic analysis to understand impacts to flooding and where there may be opportunities to improve conditions. So this is a sort of a timeline of how you can start with these mapping and documenting this information, and it can continue to be influenced through all of these different types of municipal plans and projects, hitting highlights like water quality, natural resources, and flooding. So I'm going to shift gears and talk a little bit about watershed planning, building off of this idea of conservation planning and ways to incorporate small streams into these plans. So a watershed plan is defined as planning for future conditions using a watershed framework and scale. Other conservation plans may use a municipal boundary. In this particular case, we're looking at the watershed boundary, so it may include multiple municipalities. Watershed plans often have a focus on water quality and natural resources, but they can also include other issues using a watershed scale. Watershed plans include a characterization of existing information and also specific actions to meet key goals. And the process and the product of watershed planning will allow us to build consensus and develop strategies with a team that's ready to move forward and implement those. So the watershed planning process is like other conservation plans. We'll start with defining your goals and then also delineating a watershed and thinking about what the most appropriate scale might be to address the specific concerns. Bringing together stakeholders and compiling existing data. I want to talk a little bit about this compile existing data aspect. Oh my God, this cat loves watershed planning, can't not be involved. So this step of compiling existing data is really important in bringing together physical characteristics. Where are the streams? Where are the other water bodies and water resources? Water quality, quantity, land use and land cover, habitat, water infrastructure. Don't forget the water infrastructure. Demographic, social data, local laws and policies, and previous plans. All of that information can come together into a watershed characterization, which can be its own document. As you're going through this process, The next step might be to ask, what additional information do you need to plan? So by compiling all this information and putting it together, you'll be able to find gaps and prioritize what some key next steps might be. So that might include monitoring, modeling, or assessing local priorities, goals, needs, and values, and having conversations with residents. This is also a great opportunity to map and document your small streams, either ahead of time, or you may go through this watershed characterization planning process and realize that there are really important gaps and you don't have that information mapped and documented yet. So we can think about the watershed planning process as two different overall steps. So we can have these three steps of delineating a watershed, bringing together an advisory committee, and compiling existing data as a characterization. And we can think about these steps as developing an action plan. This terminology comes out of the Department of State's watershed planning guidance document, which is what's used for Department of State funded watershed plans. I'll talk about that in a minute. But this type of planning process really shows up broadly across conservation planning. So you can also think about it as the steps to develop a natural resources inventory as more of the characterization, and an open space plan as the action plan. So whether this process happens at a municipal scale with a process and tool like a natural resource inventory or open space plan, or at the watershed scale, it's still a lot of these same basic steps. And obviously having a watershed plan or a natural resources inventory, these things can really work together and achieve a lot of these same benefits. So it's great to have one, the other, or both. At the end of the watershed planning process, you'll have a group of people on board ready to work on issues and priorities. That watershed characterization to summarize current conditions. And then if you do that second part as well, you'll have that prioritized specific and strategic actions to improve watershed health. So just to go back to the slide for a moment, we can think about, just like a natural resource inventory is one discrete document and an open space plan is the second, we can do that same process for watershed planning as well and start with a characterization. You can also start with an action plan if you have a good sense of what key actions are needed as well. So we can think about how these different steps relate to each other, and often they can be iterative. Obviously, there are limitations to planning. You can't plan for everything. You will also need to respond to new issues as they arise. But having a plan in place will help you be prepared for issues. So one example is flooding, especially understanding where your small urban streams are can help understand where future flood risks may be. But really, an excellent example of this is in the Quasea Creek Watershed Management Plan, which was done in 2015. They created detailed maps and documented exactly how the city of Newburgh's drinking water supply, how that system worked. And this is really the first time this had shown up in a public place. And talk about small urban streams with a big impact. We've got Silver Stream, we've got something called Murphy's Ditch, and these little small streams that are diverting water and transferring the water supply really became extremely significant when the drinking water supply was found to be contaminated with PFAS chemicals. And so again, it's not like we could have prevented that issue, but having these maps in place and having the Quasea Creek Watershed Alliance that really understood how these interconnections took place really was critical to getting started with resolving the PFAS contamination, which obviously is an ongoing and critical issue. So in terms of different types of watershed plans, you'll want to think about what your goal is: water quality, flooding, and erosion. There are other goals. Again, thinking about strategic actions, maybe you need an action plan. Thinking about what your watershed is like and what scale might be most appropriate. You can look at a really big scale like the Wallkill River Watershed Plan, which probably won't include many small streams. But in 2019, a group came together on the Monhegan Brook to develop a much smaller scale watershed plan that mapped underground sections and other small streams. So I think it's helpful to think about the type of scale of planning and the opportunities that are available through those. So again, watershed characterization or assessment can be the first step to inventory existing information. It may include some actions and next steps, and funding is available from the Hudson River Estuary Program to support watershed characterization and planning. Good example is the State of the Sawmill River watershed. Department of State funds watershed plans, and they have a watershed planning framework that is very useful. A couple of examples include the Tidal Rondout Creek and the Quasaic Creek management plans, which I've mentioned. If you're interested in watershed planning for sources of drinking water, the DWSP2 program provides technical assistance through New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and the Department of Health. If your municipality is interested in that, you can submit an application for free technical assistance. If you're concerned about flooding or erosion, you might want to consider hydrologic and hydraulic flood studies, like what's being done for the Main Street Brook this year, or stream management plans that consider watershed impacts on the stream channel. And you might also consider planning at a watershed scale for other specific goals that might include stormwater, aquatic connectivity, habitat, riparian buffers, and so on. So often these types of plans focus on opportunities to implement best management practices. And an example here is the Patroon Creek Green Infrastructure Plan. Here in the city of Albany, the Patroon Creek is in a very densely developed watershed. You can see all that red is impervious surface cover. And really, in this case, a green infrastructure plan is going to help protect some of these small streams in thinking about, again, looking up into the watershed and using green infrastructure practices for improvements. Watershed plans are eligible for New York State Climate Smart Communities certification points, including watershed plans for water quality, source water protection, and flood mitigation plans. So in terms of next steps, we encourage you to think about opportunities to both protect, but also to restore small urban streams. Look to the watershed or sewershed to restore the functions of urban, suburban, small streams, and to consider watershed planning as a tool to map and protect small streams, incorporating the kinds of work that Gretchen showed in her talk of ways to document those small streams that might not show up on maps currently. So thank you so much for having me today. And I think I have one additional slide from Gretchen before we go into Q&A.
All right, yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention this. We have a bit of homework for you all, something to do before the session that we'll be holding next week. We'd like you to look up the stream protection regulations in your community. For most municipalities, local laws are available on the municipal website or through links that you can find there. Many towns have also put their local legislation onto the eCode 360 site, which is easily searchable using keywords such as stream or watercourse. In your town or city ordinance, for example, how are jurisdictional streams defined? Are there required setbacks or buffer zones along streams? Is there a stream or floodplain overlay district with special land use restrictions? Does a conservation subdivision law have specifications related to streams? Is there a designated critical environmental area related to streams? Or are there any other provisions that are especially related to streams and stream protection? If you have any such regulations, take some notes so that we can discuss them in the next session on next Wednesday, the 17th of November. When we'll be talking about existing protections for streams and the limitations of those protections at the federal, state, and local level. So that's all I needed to say, and we'll send it back to you, Nate.
Great. I have something in the chat that's saying to send out the homework again to folks via email, and we were actually already planning on doing that. I am going to send those to folks that are registered for that webinar. So everyone that's registered for the protection webinar of our Headwater Stream series. So I encourage you to sign up as soon as possible so that you get that email. And I'll also remind people in the follow-up email. So, and that, yes, I'm seeing a chat that's saying to send a reminder for the registration link next week, and I will do that at the end of this week. I'll send all that information along. But yeah, thanks, Gretchen. That was terrific, and thank you, Emily. I wanted to add, Emily was going through the laundry list of funding sources, and she had mentioned that NRIs and open space plans are kind of the characterization and watershed plans analogies at the municipal scale. And I just wanted to remind everyone that the Hudson River Estuary Program funds the creation of both NRIs and open space plans and open space inventories through our estuary grants program. So we'll share all the funding sources as well. It's going to be a very long email, so get prepared for a lot of links. But if you do have other questions, feel free to reach out to our presenters because we're all willing to answer questions specifically directed to us. Okay, we do have some questions. A question directed at Emily. In the photo of the chalk art, is there a low damp line on the pavement? And I think just broadly, maybe answer how some of the other evidence of, streams being buried that you might be able to see from a site visit.
Sure. So yes, well, that wasn't necessarily a damp line, but you saw the seam between the asphalt, and in that parking lot, the asphalt was crumbling around that around the storm drain. There's a couple storm drains. One of them ended up having like a traffic cone on top of it to prevent people from, having damage to their car. But certainly having a buried stream shows up, right? It doesn't just disappear. And so that seam wasn't damaged, and it wasn't necessarily the water, but if you go there during a rainstorm, which of course I have done many times, you can see the water sort of pooling up in that seam. It so wants to be a real stream again. So in terms of other hints when you're walking around, my personal favorite is looking for a guardrail. So oftentimes people bury streams, but they leave up the guardrail. And so if you're walking around and you see just like a funny guardrail and there's nothing there, when we were doing that stream walk in Ravenna, that was one of the things that helped us when we were walking around. Going after it rains is helpful. You can sort of follow your ear and listen to the different storm drains. Passerbys may or may not think you dropped your keys down the storm drain, but that's just an occupational hazard. You can assure them you're fine. Other things include, looking for those gullies like that, those low-lying areas, or places that are wet that are surprising. So I showed a picture, maybe I can go back to it really quickly, of an area that used to have an impoundment in Kingston, and it's often very damp after storms. So let me just actually share my screen if I can. Thank you, Nate. Right, so here next to the stream, this used to be a skating pond in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and the history shows up in the landscape. You can see that it still wants to be kind of a wet, low-lying, pond there. So those are some other clues. Obviously, it is right next to the stream, so that's a little bit easier, but this also might show up in other places like parks, ball fields, basements, and so on.
All right, great. Thank you, Emily. We don't have any other questions queued up, but I'd like to invite everyone to, take one last chance, and you can provide questions to myself or Emily or Gretchen, and we'll try to address those.
So Nate, there was one question that came right after you finished your talk that we didn't get a chance to answer, and that is, does the stream have to be mapped to use the watershed mapping tool, the USGS mapper. I think they mean StreamStats.
Yes. So that it doesn't have to be. It'll map the basin for whatever point that you click on. I'm not sure if there is accuracy issues with that because they do provide kind of the drawn streams on there, but I actually went back and checked and it will delineate a basin around random areas. The basin looks a little weird, so I don't know if I necessarily trust it. You may want to focus on just developing watersheds for unique streams.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I think StreamStats it creates flow lines in places that are sort of low-lying areas, and so sometimes it looks like there are a lot of streams on the map, and you might go out there and not see a stream flowing all the time. But it is a great way to find those streams as well. So you can find watersheds for anything that they map as a flow line.
All right, well, I'm not seeing any other questions, so I will, no need to hold everyone hostage here for that. I thank you all for attending. We really enjoyed presenting to you. I want to remind everyone that we do have next Wednesday at 3 p.m., same time, same place, or, well, different link, but same time. We'll be working on looking at municipal, state, and federal protections for small streams. So please register for that. And if not, at the end of this webinar, there'll be a 3-question survey. We really appreciate any feedback you could give us once this window closes. And also, if you're looking for municipal training credit, that email will arrive sometime after this meeting ends. So be patient. If you don't get anything, follow up with me and I'll make sure that you get your credit if you attended. All right. Do we have a chat? I don't know if people are just thanking us. Yep. Just happy customers. So anyway, take care, everyone. Have a great night. Thank you again to our presenters, and we'll see you all next week.